all those things that we thought were outdated, and I used to actually have debate with my grandfather. Then I thought I was the smart one, but I had all the answers.
Right.
Now I stand corrected, very rudely. Doctors tell me, oh, what Abbaji was saying was actually a more scientific thing to do. Now that's very embarrassing for people like me, because we were really pursuing science, and we had this great faith in, oh, science has all the answers.
What is considered good in a culture comes from the very elite. It happened in France, it happened in Germany, it happens in the US. Whatever the elite want, or whatever the elite think is good culture or highbrow culture, is what is adopted by, the lower masses eventually. There's a huge dichotomy. Our culture seems to be stemming from the ground up. Like, if the ground says we want to be conservative, we don't want to be liberal, we don't want to deal with the US, we don't want to deal with India, the elites will also, somehow start wearing shalwar kurtas, they will start wearing, topis, they'll start becoming more Muslim, just to be in line with what is acceptable. My question there is, where have the intelligentsia, where the smart people in Pakistan disappeared to? Why can't they provide a vision for culture? Like, what should be our culture in the next 10, 15 years?
Well, that's, I think you've touched...
it's a huge topic.
Yes, it's so many points there, but I think one thing which is very clear is simply the fact that everyone knows when we talk about our culture, everyone knows that you have regional traditions and culture and food and dresses. Now, for example, look at diet.
Right.
All that we thought or told by doctors and industry that this is good for you is actually not good anymore. The oil and all that, now they say that, okay, you have to get back to the basics.
Right.
The traditional way of eating, and then basic ghee and all that comes in.
Go organic.
Yes. Exactly. So I always say that heritage is not just an out-of-date fashion statement. It's proven science. So heritage is whatever has stood the test of time. And I think we must recognize the fact that all those things that we thought were outdated, and I used to actually have debate with my grandfather that, oh, father, now this oil is very good and what you eat, and these eggs are really bad for the heart. My grandfather never agreed. But then I thought I was the smart one. The research, what we call research these days. Oh, I have now carried research and
I've done my research.
And Abbaji, I know. You don't know what you're doing. So he at 90 or 100 didn't know what he was doing. But I had all the answers. Now I stand corrected, very rudely.
You're a very brave man to admit that.
Now, because doctors tell me, oh, what Abbaji was saying was actually a more scientific thing to do. Now that's very embarrassing for people like me, because we were really pursuing science, and we had this great faith in, oh, science has all the answers. Similarly, a lot of medicines now are banned. So heritage, nothing has been banned. In fact, science has now verified that our traditional lifestyles were actually much more scientific.
Much healthier. I mean, if it's slow living...
So it's healthier, it's more scientific, right? So where are we going then with this modernity? I just don't understand that even scientific evidence suggests otherwise. But we're still open to just keep experimenting at the cost of our traditions and heritage.
So you wouldn't say that the modern culture, our modern society cannot exist with the heritage culture. We can't blend the two?
Of course we can.
How do we do that?
For example, modernity will bring in scientific development, right?
Okay.
We have to obviously carefully, but we have to also include that. But the fact that mother is important, grandfather is important. Why should a screen or my fold mobile phone should not be replacing that in terms of importance and authority and significance? So I think it is difficult. It's a challenge, because now even for parents it's very convenient that I can give my child a laptop and then he's off my case, and I can relax and watch my movie. So yes, it takes effort. But I think we need to realize that the traditional ways of doing things were actually very scientific. So if you want to be scientific, as they say, you have to really look into heritage and your traditions and converse with them. And you will obviously arrive at whatever good things are. And then obviously not all traditions are glorious or scientific.
Right.
And if they're not in tune with science science, I'm a little bit skeptical because science keeps changing.
Hold on, science keeps improving, right? It doesn't change. I mean, it improves. We get better facts and we get better output.
But I say change because it completely wipes out what it used to say. So improvement is that this car, did 0 to 100 in, let's say, 5 seconds, and I've improved it now to 0 in 3 seconds.
Right.
But what science does is that, okay, the car was a bad idea.
Let's go with flying cars.
So that's like, in my opinion, that's changing it. That's not improving it, because you're now saying, no, the horse is better than the car.
Interesting. So the perspective in science are differed from the perspectives you take in culture. And sometimes they do. Wouldn't people accuse you of being a Luddite if you're looking backwards and trying to get the older ways? I mean, I would still prefer a blender rather than a Madhani.
No, but that's not a problem. What I'm talking about, I think, is more values.
Interesting.
And what I'm talking about is a more organic way of living. Now, science says eat organic. That's what tradition is. So the most modern people are also going back, if you were to take that case.
Right.
But that's not going back. That's actually acknowledging science. So heritage is science.
You also would agree that there are certain discontents about the Pakistani culture. There are people who believe this culture to be the one where everybody is out to get something, where everybody is out to rob from me or to steal from me. I was given the same warnings when I was coming to Pakistan as the ones I was given when I was going to Kenya or Nigeria. That be careful on the street. There is a culture of, somebody will try to swipe something from you. It's part of their essence. Is that because of the depravity we've had here, or is that because of people just out to get you?
I think it's, again, side effects, because even in America, if they are thieves, you don't call that American culture.
Of course not. I mean, if I go to New York and I get mugged, I'm not going to say this is the culture of New York.
Yes.
Even though it's said to be the culture of New York, that if you go there, you get mugged.
So I'm just saying that when you look at, for example, when you talk about culture or American culture or whatever, you think about cowboys, you think about Texas horses, you talk about burgers, you talk about
But
jazz.
It does have cowboys, it does have burgers. Texas is hugely famous for their barbecue.
Exactly.
Right.
So yes, you talk about that. But when you think of Pakistan, you're not allowed to think of cuisine. No. You're not allowed to think of namkeen tikka, the Pakhtun tikka, which is I love,
Yes.
So all those things are somewhere gone.
Yeah.
And all we can think about is these three criminals on the road, and you say, oh, this is Pakistani culture.
Exactly.
Or you have let's say those wannabes, babus, as a result of that colonial education, and now they are fake or trying to be something. That would be a distortion. I wouldn't even, although culture is everything, so I'm not saying that culture also changes, so this is our culture also in a way, but I would say this is a distortion in culture rather than the actual culture, because it's, when you say it's culture, then it's like for me to say that, okay, so all crime then should be culture everywhere in the world. It's not true.
It would be great if we could find out a particular definition of culture. Now, from what we've been told, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, it's a sum total of language, religion, way of life, cuisine, music, literature, philosophy. Everything that can be thrown into a people makes that people's culture.
Yes.
Given that definition, I would have to say that the Pakistani culture, since it has been at the crossroads of cultures for many millennia, is completely a milkshake. I'm not entirely sure what culture I'm dealing with unless I know what the socio-economic background of that particular Pakistani is. If I meet an elite Pakistani, I know what language I'm supposed to speak with them, I know what they're going to say to me, and I know what I'm supposed to say to them. If I meet a Pakistani on the street, I'm never quite sure. Doesn't that bifurcation mean that we're not really sure about what our culture is?
No, it's that difference obviously is naturally a result of all that has been going on here, and especially our past 100 years, because that has a very direct impact.
Right.
But the fact is that there are different cultures, there are different backgrounds. Like literature, you talked about all poetry and everything. The problem here is not culture, but the lack of it. Most Pakistanis now are not aware. For example, most Punjabis will not know Punjabi poetry or literature. They would not know much about Punjab. They would not be except food, I think, to some extent. And food is obviously it remains relevant. But if you look at someone playing a chimta, that musical instrument, and if modern Punjabi man would look at him, he would probably think that this is yes, Punjabi, but it's not really now the culture. It's an outdated, old thing. So we must preserve, maybe keep it, as we keep the Lahore fort.
Right.
But it has no relevance to me today.
Exactly. We've murdered our culture and brought something new in.
And so we're not, we can't read Urdu anymore.
Right.
Most of our modern educated people are not into Urdu. They do not use Urdu.
Right.
I think I have not used Urdu in my past, 30, 40 years.
Right.
I never had to write any letter in Urdu. It's all English.
Right.
So obviously, I have also moved away, and I'm actually that generation where we've studied literature, Urdu literature, poetry. I still use Urdu. It's very much a part of my life.
Right.
In our homes, we are speaking Urdu, all mixed.
We've been told half of culture is language.
Yeah, and so half of that is gone.
It's gone completely.
And as a result of that, now we're even, for example, if you ask a young man that you got to go to a marriage party and you need to be really formal, what would he think of? A Turkish suit and a Western tie and all that.
Right.
He would never think of I want to wear a pagadi and I want to be formal here, so I'm going to wear a Balochi pagadi and I'm going to go to the function. No, that will only happen perhaps maybe in some villages in Balochistan, but even in Punjab, I actually took my students at one point in time to this village near Lahore, and there was no young man who even knew how to wear a dhoti or a turban. So I had to look for an old man, very senior, 80, 85 years old man, and he then taught them, because I had asked them to actually learn from the village how to wear a turban or a dhoti. They didn't know.
You're absolutely right, Talha, and at the same time, there'll be others who will be accusing you that you're holding on to a culture which is dead. You're holding on to a turban, you're holding on to shalwar kurta, you're holding on to things which have been swept away by this great American life. We all should be wearing denim jeans, we all should be wearing tennis shoes and t-shirts and work 19 hours a day for our masters. Because that is the idea which is,
do your job.
Do your job. Exactly. What are you doing here? Do your job. Why are you doing standing around here? So that sort of an idea still exists and is coming very quickly to our culture. There's this tide coming for which I think we have not prepared our people. We have not prepared the Pakistani nation. And frankly, I think our educators are to blame there, that they failed us. They did not translate the languages we needed to be translated to, they did not translate the books that we needed. And after all this, are you going to blame the young generation for not following their culture when that culture has not been given to them?
No, in fact, I give them credit. I mean, in my class, I try and teach. I think a very major reason there is that I'm able to interact with younger people. And I think younger people are much more conceptual. They're much more aware of all what is going on, even in terms of culture. I think we look at them and we say, oh, these are, young people are not worried anymore. But I think whenever I've talked to them, they have been the most conceptual in terms of understanding, asking the right questions. Young people, I think, are our only hope, if you really ask me.
That really gives me hope when you say these things, that young people are the hope for the future.
They're incredible, because I think they now realize that a lot of that bandwidth and repertoire that they could have possibly have was not given to them by people like me and even people elder to us.
Because you include yourself in the people.
Yes, generally yes. Our generation has not, because I do not think we had any idea. Our parents were actually struggling because they were pre-47 parents, and they were struggling. This was a new thing. They had to, make things going. So I actually, not even blame them as much, because I think they were struggling. But I think our generation, the post-47 generation, so my cousin's much elder to me, but all that generation, the post-47 generation, I think, had to then maybe think about who they were. And I don't think we've asked the right questions.